So, what we like to do with these roundtables, and it had been a couple years, we started doing roundtables years ago, but really they took on a new role during COVID, especially being able to hop on quick Zoom calls and really take the temperature of our members. And that could be everything from the just basic panic and relief that we need to provide during COVID to the relief funding. But now, kind of as we hopefully edge out of the pandemic, it's really just about checking in with all of you and being able to one, again, take your temperature post-pandemic, but also just as the Vermont economy moves forward and as your businesses move forward, how are you all doing? Two, so that you can cross-pollinate even on these digital screens with one another. And, we have some people from the North Shire, as you can see. We have some people in the South Shire. This is exactly why the Chamber exists, to say there's more than just kind of our towns that need to operate together. So really encouraging that. And then if, things come out of this, really encouraging you as a chamber, we're here to connect you. We're not here to do your job or do your marketing, but if you found that you had some synergies with people, saying, hey, Andrea, connect with Bernadette afterwards, and you guys sound like you got some good energy going, and we'll encourage you, but lead it on your own. So that's kind of really what we're hoping to get out of today. What I like to do is go around the pixels. I'll call on you, introduce yourself, your business, and maybe one challenge or one opportunity you're really excited about this week, this month, maybe as spring and the sun comes out, you're a little bit more optimistic about it. So share either a challenge or opportunity, and again, kind of who you work for. And I'm going to start with Jeffrey in my top left-hand corner.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me all right? I'm Jeffrey. I'm the owner of North Shire Insurance. Things are going good. Slow and steady. I just successfully sold $500,000 in insurance this last year in 1 year, and I'm in 7 states now, and that's on my own. My actual agency is up to about 700 because I have an employee in Pennsylvania now. So things are going good, and I'm moving to Main Street in Manchester here in about 2 weeks. So, rent's doubling, and I got to get employee and stuff like that. So that's pretty much my challenges. It's natural growth and having to step up to the plate and kind of restart on what's coming in and what's going out. So yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeffrey. Yep. Bernadette?
I'm old, so I'm not as quick on the unmute button.
All good.
But congratulations, Jeff. That sounds like quite an update and on those sales. My name is Bernadette, and I'm the Director of Marketing, Philanthropy, and Business Development at the VNA and Hospice of the Southwest region. We have office locations in Bennington and Rutland County. We have some satellite offices in Manchester, right on Main Street. We have one in Dorset, and then, of course, Rutland and Bennington. We're in the Putnam block in Bennington, and we're really thrilled to be a part of that downtown initiative. We love our space downtown, and it's close to all the places we need to be. Those of us that work on a supportive side, we interact a lot with the area providers and the hospitals and the nursing homes, and our staff love that location. Easy in, easy out. I would say, like most healthcare providers, our biggest challenge, besides inadequate funding for programs that we offer, it's staffing. And that's not a surprise to anybody on the call. And everybody probably has it in different varieties. But the stark reality is nursing is a profession that is waning. And we're thrilled when we have new nurses come through the door that are interested in home health care. But just in general, clinicians, especially our nurses and our private our personal care attendants, our home care aides, that's a supply of folks who've dwindled from the workforce. And it's a big challenge for us to try to retain and recruit the best of the best. And we are certainly hopeful that as new people understand the importance of healthcare, or, folks career-wise, second career. We have a lot of nurses who are second career folks who I'm just thrilled because they've been through the ringer in some other career, and then they bring all the compassion that they've developed over their work life into a nursing or therapy career with us. So I won't babble on about our agency, but I'm really glad that you've done this, Matt. I think it's a great opportunity to network with folks, and even if we can't be in person. So thank you for coordinating.
Yes. Thanks, Bernadette. And I know we have a couple health providers on this call, so I'd love to at some point just dial into the healthcare industry, the future of it. We're not going to solve it all here, but I think it would just be helpful. One of the things, and Erica, our membership managers on this call too, the big theme that we've had over the last couple of years, but really punched home kind of last year into this year, is just the role of us connecting. And I often talk about the verticals you all work in, which is, we've got to do marketing, we've got to do customers, we've got to do the whole our vertical. And that, honestly, as an entrepreneur and as a business owner or a leader in a nonprofit, that is what you should be focusing on. Rarely are you or should you be focusing on the connecting pieces, right? The white space between those verticals. Our job, and I see John on here is from the MBA, I would say both our jobs is kind of connecting that white space, that horizontal plane, as I call it, to the vertical. You guys are worried about your vertical. Erica, John, Matt, we need to be helping you guys get together, because I do think that is where opportunities, innovation, solving problems exist, is in that white space. You can't all do it all in Jeffrey's vertical. He can't solve all the housing problems, all the insurance problems, all the community problems, nor can Bernadette. But if the chamber and other partners can pull you together on a Zoom call, in person, and I think, I'll finish with saying we're pretty excited, saying we have these digital roundtables, but we have a lot. Eric and I just finished up half of our summer gatherings, and there's like 5 to 7 in-person gatherings, which is just terrific. And it's about celebrating businesses and ribbon cuttings. It's about welcoming new families to the county in our state-to-state program. It's about getting to new businesses that are opening and celebrating them as well. So we're gonna have a lot of opportunities to actually get together in person for you all too. Andrea, I know you've hopped on this call before, but great to see you again. Introduce us with your business and kind of give us an overview of something maybe you're excited about or just see a challenge on the horizon.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Bacchi. I own Think Dynamic Digital, which is an online-based digital marketing and business solutions company. I'm in Shaftesbury. However, I'm a digital nomad, so I can go anywhere. Although I'm not really right now with the pandemic, but I'm bebopping in between here and Saratoga. So that's kind of nice. I work with clients all over the state. I'm also a marketing consultant with the Vermont Small Business Development Center, where I'm essentially teaching their clients how social media and email marketing really can grow a business. And especially in a time like now with the pandemic, where in-person hasn't really been happening as much, even though it's now continuing. I've also, a couple of things I'm really excited about. I've just been asked to be a mentor with Launch Vermont, which is, in partnership with the Lake Champlain Regional Chamber of Commerce. I'm also a member of that wonderful organization. And just recently became a consultant with the Community Navigator pilot program. If you're aware of that program, that's also in partnership with the Vermont Small Business Development Center, which got a grant from the U.S. Small Business Administration. So I'm all over the place, and what really excites me is that I'm able to help more businesses with digital marketing, business solutions. I mean, it's little things from, this is a person that would be able to help you. I might not be able to. Here's someone in my network who can, all the way up to, okay, we're going to build a landing page for you, or we're going to get your email list segmented, or whatever that looks like. And I love all of that stuff. And I just like a client, which I'm confidential about my clients right now. I'm going to be working with a very important popular music client soon, and that really makes me feel good because they are really changing the lives of others. So I'm able to help them do the same for the community. So I'm just really happy to be here, and I appreciate Matt hosting this. And I'm interested to hear from all of you as well. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. A question for you. Do you find that people have held on to their marketing dollars for 2 years just to kind of see where everything settles? And are you finding either just kind of more interest in the digital part of it, or just in general, like feels like, and I know just from Erica and me, kind of feeling like people are coming out of the woods a little bit and saying, I'll spend a little bit more, or now we have to get our customers back because we kind of have been in limbo for 2 years. What are you finding?
Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of people are, it's kind of a mix actually. I'm seeing people that know that marketing is always important. You know, some people are like, oh, I don't really want to spend money because, you know, this, that, or the other thing, or we're heading into like, well, there's a lot of inflation. And I said, well, really, this is the time. I mean, it's always time to put money into marketing. But now when things are getting a little more tricky is definitely the time to work on your marketing. Because in a competitive market, you want to make sure that your content, that your services are out in the forefront, whether that's through SEO, social media. I mean, it's all like a little bit of each, quite honestly.
Yeah.
I have a lot of people that are very scared to go in the approach of email marketing because they don't want to be the annoying email. There's so many reasons to continue on an email. And honestly, the big important thing is to make sure that your emails bring value. It's all about bringing value to your client base and your leads, so that you're not that annoying email. But yeah, it's a mix, Matt. It's totally a mix. But it's nice to see the light bulb go off in people's heads once they see the results start to come in and they're like, oh, people are actually going to my website and buying the products because they know about me. So that's kind of nice.
Cool. Well, keep us up to date on that. I'd love to hear more. I do want to give a chance, Erica. We've always left you at the end, but let's get you here in the middle. Erica, our membership manager, many of you know her or at least have received an email from her probably once a week, every week, speaking of emails. But Erica, introduce yourself and just kind of what you're working on and anything, other insights that you're seeing from your membership interactions.
Well, Matt, you just introduced me, so I think they know who I am. And you also mentioned we are working on a lot of in-person events in the next couple of months. So we hope to see you guys in person. These are great to get together quickly when we're all busy in our days. We can sit down, take an hour, have some lunch, and talk over Zoom. But really looking forward to the in-person interactions. Also an opportunity for each of our members to introduce themselves to a wider audience. Like Matt said, we have families coming in. I think there's 10 families coming in May. We're doing a stay-to-stay combination with a Friday night mixer. Yeah, Thursday night, Friday night at Lake Perrin. So if you can make it, it will be beautiful up there. We'll watch the sunset. We'll have something to eat. There will be a cash bar available, but we also have in April, we'll be at the Southern Vermont Arts Center for another mixer in person. Great location, and we're happy to be up in the North Shire. A lot of our events tend to lean a little bit to the south, so it's nice to get up there. And I know a lot of the women on the call already are registered for the Women's Leadership Luncheon that is happening at the Wilson House in Dorset. So if you haven't registered, there are, I think, a couple of more seats, but that's it.
Yep.
So I just work on trying to make like Matt said, the connections and the in-person events so that we can all enjoy each other's company and learn from one another.
Yep. Let me put a plug in for Erica too. The travel guide will be rip-roaring back. And as we've talked to Andrea about, investing and putting more marketing in, especially coming out of COVID and being, in this kind of competitive environment, I'm sure Erica will be following up with you if you would like to take an ad out in the travel guide. Services, again, tend to be a little bit hit or miss, to be honest, but it's a way to support the travel guide, and you are listed both on the website in the travel guide, and the travel guide is also digitally put on our website too. So we print about 60,000 that get sent around all over the Northeast, but also have some at home base as well as on the internet. But again, just a great way to support our travel and tourism. And trust me, people drive to town and they pop a tire, or they need an insurance agent, or they need something quick.
Real estate agent.
Real estate agents. So they are also looking at that guide too. And I think a lot of new homeowners get them as well. Great.
Yeah, and also a lot of our local community now, because it's getting harder to find a phone book. So people are actually using the guide to find services.
Great. Thanks, Erica.
Mm-hmm.
Ayla, Reeve, how are you? Good to see you again. It's been a minute.
It's been a minute, Matt. I'm Alia Reeve. I'm the medical director at United Counseling Service. And we're the mental health center for all of Bennington County. So we're one of the 11 DAs, designated agencies by the Vermont Department of Health. But what I think is important about us is we're trying to meet the people who have complex mental health and substance use needs, whether they're children, parents, or aging, teenagers or adults. We have a complicated and interesting community. One of the things we've done successfully is integrate a lot of our efforts with Southwestern Vermont Medical Center, but we're very pleased with the grant that we got this last year to be having a person located in the sheriff's offices and going out on calls with them. And so our liaison with both the Bennington Police Department, the Manchester Police Department, and the Sheriff's Department has increased enormously over the last 6 to 7 months. And that's a bi-directional effort where they are leaning on us and calling us on us more appropriately, and we're able to divert situations, bring people calmly and successfully to the emergency room for medical assessments before they get psychiatric care, and then link them to a new clinic that we started in January called the FAST Clinic, which is finding access to services and treatment. And the idea is to decrease the barriers of access to immediate assessment. Out of that, in the first 2 months, we have accurate data. We're just analyzing the data from March. We've seen over a third of people are having their needs met just by having a one-time in-depth conversation and being directed to the other resources in the community that they need. So it's a way, instead of people being put on an interminable waiting list, it's a way to get what are the crisis needs of the moment, how to come up with a solution, how to decrease their distress, because it is using a methodology, one could say, that is actually largely championed in Vermont, along with several other local states, and started in Europe. And it's called, it's called the Community Network Approach. And it is a way of both having a person being heard, or a family, whichever, together with one therapist, but other people listening, or a reflector. And so people like Jennifer, who are familiar with family therapy, it's very similar to that kind of model where the person who's observing is listening and reflecting back what they have heard from both parties, or all the parties. It's a very non-judgmental, non-pathology labeling method of hearing where the distress people have. So it invites you to participate in making change and caring for yourself, as opposed to getting a new diagnosis that needs a separate treatment. Now, this links back to on multiple levels. And I have to say, I may or may not be the best person to be representing UCS, because as the medical director, I am usually mired in all of the clinical decisions, not the community outreach so much, although I do a fair amount. But all of our directors are right now at the National Conference for Mental Health Center down in Orlando. And we are also preparing to submit to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration a grant to become a certified community mental behavioral health center. It's a particularly important and financially important, but actually more so a philosophically important grant funding for 4 years to transform the way services are provided to be much more, in our case, to be much more inclusive, to reduce barriers and to reduce stigma. So there's a real concerted transformational effort within our organization to provide care differently. So that's in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, I mean,
you want me to go on 45 minutes?
Well, I was going to say we could do a whole thing on that. And I think some of the people on the call have heard my kind of stump speech around, we don't just kind of get out of a pandemic for 2 years that has completely transformed most of the way we do business and most of the way we live, and think that we didn't suffer and survive some version of a trauma. So I think
we talked about that whole community trauma experience. Yeah.
So I think there's legs there for future things, and we've done calls with you in the past just around business owners, the stress of that, the stress of the relief funding and everything else you had to do and keep your lights on, and how do we do that? But maybe it's time to, as we emerge out of this pandemic, to do another thing that just really focuses around, some key things we can do. I love the reflector thing. I want more of those when I'm meeting with businesses, so that we can pull businesses together, which I know there are some businesses that prefer not to work with other business owners, and it would be great to have some reflectors report back what each person said so that it could reiterate it. But thank you very much for joining us today, and good luck to the rest of the UCS team down in Orlando. Jen Hoffman, we're going to go to you.
Thanks, Matt. I thought they were all in Maryland. They're somewhere in the world.
Yeah, somewhere down there.
They're all at the Gaylord, which is actually where I'm going to be the first week of May for the National Association of Realtors mid-year meetings, our legislative opportunity to go to Capitol Hill and speak with Vermont's delegation. So I was excited to see other people going there. I'm Jennifer Hoffman. I am the broker owner of Hoffman Real Estate in North Bennington, Vermont. I have been in real estate for 11 years. I have worked for a couple other firms in town prior to opening up my own brokerage, April 1st, 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic. It was a huge leap of faith.
Auspicious.
Yes. And, I've known I wanted to own my own company for a really long time. I got my broker's license in 2015. And the opportunity arose when the governor shut us down, and I couldn't work in my business for an indefinite period of time. It seemed like it was going to be at least a month. So I was never going to have a better opportunity to take a step back and build my own company at that time. So I seized an opportunity that I didn't ask for, but it turned out to be a wonderful thing. And I only wish that I had done it sooner, because I'm very happy being my own boss. There's a lot of other challenges, of course, as you all know, who wear the boss hat. This is my first time wearing that hat. So there's been a lot for me to learn, even though I feel like I was uniquely qualified and prepared to do so. It still all of a sudden put all that pressure on me to do it by myself. I'll be very transparent, because that's who I am. I don't trust other people very well when it comes to like my baby. So I've had a really hard time bringing people in to help me with things like bookkeeping or accounting, because those are things that I normally do myself. But stepping into this next level of a role, I've needed to create more professional partnerships than I've ever had before. And I've gained some of those relationships because of meetings like this that the Chamber has put on. It has introduced me to other people who I got to hear talking about what they do and feeling that connection, like, wow, I think this person can actually really help me get to where I need to be. So I'm really grateful for meetings like this, where I can learn what other organizations are working on, and build new connections. Alia is actually a client of mine, so she's a connection I have. I'll be so excited to sell her house when the time comes. And Erica works for me as well. She's also a real estate agent, so she's wearing multiple hats. And I just think it's Bennington in general, let alone Bennington town specifically, it's coming into a really beautiful time. Not only is the Putnam block all up and running. Tonight, they're launching the second phase and getting some public input on that. Willow Park is getting all redone. Mayfest is coming back. I also now sit on the BBC board of directors. So I've always been a champion for downtown, but now I get to like wear the name badge and be an ambassador for downtown. So I'm just really excited for everything that is coming down the line for Bennington. And real estate has been super hot. It's still really hot, but I will say that it's the tamping of the brakes that we're all experiencing is because there's just no inventory. So, you know, if you saw my board over here, you would know that I have a lot in the pipeline, but those things are just not out there yet. So hopefully when more inventory comes, we can feel more optimistic and confident that even with rising interest rates, the market will stay strong.
And another conversation for us to have, those rising interest rates and inflation. And I should put a plug in here for Jen, just because I really like the example. You know, Jen pulled Erica and me aside at some point, and to nobody's surprise, I'm sure, said, hey, you know, there's a housing crisis in Southern Vermont. And I was like, yeah, I know. She said, but let's use the kind of the power of the chamber to maybe bring the right people to the table. I know we've done a couple housing summits, but let's kind of use the membership from the contractors to the realtors, from the lawyers to the bankers and financial investors. Let's bring them all around the table. So we're working on a housing gathering, a housing forum up at the country club for those experts and professionals to get around, have a lunch, but really go through 2 hours of just, you know, kind of what we're framing up as challenges and solutions. And again, I always tell Erica to remind me, because I need the reminder, that I'm not there to solve the problem. I'm there to just connect, facilitate, and listen. And I think a lot of other people are. But to your point, Jen, you know, then you meet 2 more people, right? And those 2 people know 2 more people. And if it didn't happen right at that meeting, it may happen 6 months, 2 years. That's how relationships work. So I think, again, as a chamber, taking a step back, kind of entering really what we feel is a post-COVID, post-pandemic world in Bennington County, being able to say, what do we do really well and where are niches that we can focus on? One of those is going to be the housing crisis that I think we're in, and the other one's going to be workforce. Stay tuned to that. And if you are finding something, you know, again, I go back to Dr. Reeves. I do think there's a mental crisis issue in the world, in America, and Vermont and Southern Vermont is not absent from that. And I think we have a lot of work to do. And if we could do that work, we'd be able to do our actual professional work. So I think there's something around that we can play with as well. And we will wrap up our Family Feud board with John Burnham from the Manchester Business Association.
Hi, Matt. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. John Burnham from as Matt said, from the Manchester Business Association, Executive Director. If you're not familiar with the Manchester Business Association, we are a destination marketing organization. So not a chamber, which is why we're a chamber member, because we look at these opportunities as advantageous for us as it is for all of you on this call, whether you're in the service industry, lodging industry, restaurant, healthcare, whatever it may be. These networking opportunities are extremely important to individuals and businesses across our entire county. So we're thrilled to be part of this. And I will put in a plug for the Shires, even though we see no benefit from that necessarily, other than we're in it. It does, I work at our visitor center up in Manchester, and it's something we give out regularly to visitors and locals alike, actually. So the service industry can certainly benefit from being in that guide, because whether they're visiting and eventually move here, have a second home here, they're in need of all the services that we provide in our area. So you know, keep making it happen for the Shires as a whole. So, but yeah, nothing. I mean, we many things you have all expressed are very similar to what I've heard from our local businesses. I think staffing and housing and childcare are probably the biggest challenges for those people who are looking for new employees, because it's hard to draw people to the area when those things are in short supply. So I know Matt and the chamber as a whole have been working diligently along with other state and regional and local organizations, including us, trying to work together to find solutions that will bring some or alleviate some of this challenge that we all have. So glad to be here, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, John, thanks. And two things I just want to add to John. John's been a great partner for us. We're not bringing back, but we're consolidating our golf tournament, our golf classic, into one classic this year, which is a rather new venture for us at the Chamber. You would figure that a Chamber usually has a golf tournament anywhere in the country, but ours didn't. And we thought, with 3 to 4 golf courses in our region, we should probably do something about that. So, but John has been great. We're going to be at the Equinox on June 22nd. And we're also going to have a mixer there too. So even if you're not a golfer and you got a busy day, feel free to swing on up at 5:30, 6 o'clock when we'll have a whole new slew of business people coming in, but also business people coming off the course. Again, getting back to that real connection piece, which is not only do we need to hop on a Zoom call to connect, we can do it on the course as well. And I think the other thing, John, the one thing that was brought up last week that I just thought was really interesting, and I think you were on that call with Kim at Seesaw, just the amount of investment they are doing to handle like their little corner of the world, which is around staffing and workforce. So they've gone and purchased more property, turned it into staff housing. And I think, both Eric and I hopped off the call thinking we want to share that story as more kind of creative things. And of course, not everybody can do that. But where you can, you're going to have to get some pretty creative and pretty innovative. But anything else that you're seeing up specific in Manchester and kind of surrounding communities that is just, I think for many of us, I'm trying to look around, maybe just Jeff up at Northshire knows what's kind of going on in Manchester. But I always think it's important for us in Bennington and throughout the county to also know that there's development on Depot Street in Manchester and that there's, the rec center and those types of things. What else are you experiencing up there? What's exciting for you guys in the summer?
It's going to be a busy summer. That's all I can say. And, lots of events have come back this year that weren't for the past couple of years. The Bluegrass Festival, for example, our street fests, the Dorset Theater Festival, and things that happened last year, but are now coming back to what they used to be prior to COVID. So great to see all of that coming back. So we know it's going to be a very busy summer. And, our website, manchestervermont.com, has continued to see huge growth, not just over 2020, because that year you can imagine is a year no one really measures anymore because it was what it was. But growth over 2019 and 20, which just tells me that people really want to come to Southern Vermont and they really want to experience it. And they don't necessarily, even though we all know that the airline industry continues to, flights continue to get booked more and more and more, people are still feeling more comfortable with driving. So our Northeast region driving destination is become huge. And so whether it's the same feeder markets, New York and Boston and Connecticut and New Jersey. But now we're starting to see people that are driving up here from Washington, D.C. and from Pennsylvania, even as far south as North Carolina, to drive up just, for a long weekend or for a 4 or 5 night stay. So our reach has grown considerably, and it's mainly due to the COVID pandemic. So it's a plus, but it's also a minus because, again, we're going to be challenged already with staffing for the summer. And like you said, Johnny Seesaw's Lodge did their own really creative solution. They had the resources and the ability to do what they did, but it's really going to be a public and private venture to solve our challenges. And I know the town of Manchester is looking at some options for a site here in town to build potentially 40 what we call workforce housing units, not affordable housing, but affordable for workforce housing in the area to help alleviate some of that challenge. And we're even talking about, as you all may experience down in your neck of the woods, Airbnb and VRBO, many homeowners in the area that used to rent out their places annually to folks have decided to sell them because the market, as Jennifer knows, is so hot that they've decided to kick out their tenants, which has even limited our housing even more. So anyway, it's a challenge, and you know, we'll strap our boots on and get through it as we always do, but it's going to be a busy summer.
Yeah. Yeah. And what people are calling revenge travelers, if you haven't heard that term yet, but basically they are taking revenge on their 2020, 2021 year where they didn't get to travel anywhere. So, and to the point, and what's kind of fascinating to watch from an economic standpoint, with inflation, with increased gas prices, with all, I mean, things that would directly impact people's desire to travel. They don't care. You only live once. You survived a global pandemic. And so c'est la vie, like I'm going to the Catskills, I'm going to the Shires kind of mentality, which is kind of really interesting to look at psychologically. Okay, so we've kind of gone around the board, and at this point, you know, it's pretty casual. Did anybody hear anything from another partner on the call, another member? I was like, hey, I wanted to add to that, or that kind of jogged my memory of something else I wanted to share with the group. And I just want to create some space for any of those synergies.
Well, I think that Bernadette highlighted the struggles we have in hiring people into especially direct care positions, both for doing the kind of work, not having high salaries, even though we pay above minimum wage, but it's a real sandwich of our funding sources as a nonprofit coming from the state, and people where there is no shortage, as we have an aging population and we have people with chronic illnesses, there's no shortage of need, and how to have housing, because even if we get people in, there isn't housing that they can go into when the prices are skyrocketing. Into like reasonable and safe neighborhoods where families could move in. So those are all linked, and we keep talking about it, and we keep going around in circles a little bit. I don't know that there's a better way to advertise for people, but we all really need those people to move into the area.
Yeah, and I think we've often kind of talked about gears of a clock, right? And then if you get them here, they need childcare. So we need to have a good infrastructure for childcare. And all of a sudden that gear turns, we need more workers in childcare. Wait a minute, we don't have the housing for the workers and the child. So which gear turns first? But you know, one of the things I'll just encourage people with is from at least Bennington area, and John, you may be able to speak more from Manchester area, the acute pain is acute. There's small supply, hard to get housing. However, Bennington is extremely well positioned compared to the rest of Vermont. And I've asked around the state in terms of the pipeline of housing availability in the next 3 to 5 years. So if you look everything from the former middle school, high school, with Chris Gilbert working on that project, you look obviously at the phase, whatever it is, of the Putnam, you look at down the road, the Energizer building, which there's a workforce study going on with that, which would probably encourage any developer to put mixed use and affordable and workforce housing in it. That's it. And you know, I think sometimes we may feel like we're all in a vacuum saying workforce, it's, you know, it's the economy, stupid. It's the workforce housing, stupid. Everybody knows that at the table. Every economic leader, every governor, every representative, senator, trust me, they've been in plenty of meetings. So we're all rowing in the same direction. It feels like we're rowing in mud sometimes. But I would say that just be encouraged from Bennington area, I know at least, that extremely well positioned compared to, you look at, you know, Burlington, and you look at some of the other places, whether extremely rural or extremely, you know, urban and underdeveloped in terms of projects in the pipeline. Bennington's lauded as a place of like, wow, you guys really got your stuff together pre-pandemic, and you kind of had this bump in the road, but it looks like things are moving forward. John, are you also kind of seeing some of that up there? Again, I think of the Depot Street where John O'Keefe has kind of been priming that pump for a couple of years, but what else are you seeing for housing up there?
Yeah, I think you guys are in better position than we are by far when you talk about buildings that can be reused and recycled in a new way. We're talking, all that we hear is new builds, right? And there are some projects that are going on as we speak that are affordable housing or workforce housing, but aren't rental units, are actually to purchase in town. There's someone who's doing that, which is great. You know, again, being a homeowner is a wonderful privilege and honor and necessity. The project that we're talking about on Depot Street that could bring in these 40 units, you know, from a survey or so forth, research that was done several years ago. I mean, we're in need of more than 100 rental units in our area. So it will certainly help us if we can get that built in the next 3 to 5 years. You know, there are many leaders in our community, I can say, both on the state and local level, as well as private business owners and such, that truly are having these conversations regularly and trying to find ways to fix this challenge faster than waiting 3 to 5 years to have a new building built with 40 apartments in it. So I'm very optimistic because the conversation's happening regular and there's a lot of pressure to make it happen. So I truly believe it will happen, and we'll find short-term solutions, and we'll have some long-term solutions out there as well.
Thanks, John. Other discussions? And yeah, Jeffrey, go ahead. And then Andrea, and then Jen.
I'm sure Jen can attest for this, but the amount of secondary homes that are being purchased right now is staggering. Like, I'm once a week taking a call and doing a quote for somebody that's, you know, moving here, part-time, usually older, and then the Airbnb industry is like out of control. Like, there are people that are making $100,000 a year on their Airbnb, and you know, honestly, like, I live next to one, and it's not fun to live next to an Airbnb. It's a mansion, 18 cars out front of it, and but for whatever it's worth, I mean, I still don't turn that down, and most of those Airbnbs are not insured properly, by the way. There's a endorsement that they need, and a lot of insurance companies actually haven't brought that endorsement to Vermont because our population is so low that they're not actually investing the time and money to bring the typical stuff for other states that they have offered. But you know, I just think that, like, youth retention, I'm sure it's a term, but it's something that needs to be, like, thrown around, you know, as much as possible in every meeting and everything, every new building. How is this going to help keep Vermont attractive for the youth? I'm cuspy, I'm 35, I have a 4-year-old child, you know, but I'm kind of growing up now, and I'm okay with settling here. But I could imagine being 20 and 25 and being like, yeah, I want to head on out. And that's where we're having a huge problem. And with, like I said, everything being secondary homes, all the Airbnbs, a lot of Airbnbs, that it's just making it so hard, you know. That's the only things I see with all of that. Yeah.
Great. And I see John's hand up, so I want to go to John if you're going to reply to Jeffrey, and if not, then we'll put you in the queue. But John, do you have something for Jeffrey?
Yeah, I was just going to say comment about the Airbnb. You know, Manchester's huge on that. You know, VRBO, I think there's over 300 units or homes or whatever on Airbnb at any given time. And interesting you say about Jeffrey, about them not being properly insured. This is the other challenge, and this is conversations going on right now with the town specifically as to whether the town wants to mandate a special zoning requirement like they've done up at Killington to put those Airbnb, VRBO rental folks on the same playing field as you would an inn or B&B or a hotel. Yeah. And that's, until that happens, we're going to see this continue to happen, that they're going to just, hey, I can make like you said, $100,000 a year versus renting it to someone who lives in it for a year, and then having to worry about how do I evict them if they're not paying the rent and all this sort of stuff. So there's a lot of work to be.
I have a friend from Jersey that has 6 houses up here.
Yeah. 6. Yeah. And interesting enough, share my little personal story. I grew up in northern Vermont, up in the Middlebury area, and I moved out of state in my mid-20s to Boston, where I lived for 20 years, and then moved here to the Manchester area. And the reason that I moved, other than, you know, opportunity, but it seemed impossible back then that I would ever be able to buy my own home or find affordable rent based on the money I was earning in the area. And I think that's the same challenge you still have today. That hasn't changed.
Yeah, I couldn't afford to live here doing what I do, but I have investments and stuff that help me, get going.
Well, and I think to go way back to what John was saying, where not as much housing is in Manchester. Part of that is the synergies we actually have to create between the county. If you look at Vail, use Vail as an example. The service people that are working Vail probably don't live in Vail. They're living on the outskirt towns of rural, industrial, much like Arlington and the surrounding communities in Bennington. So even if we built more of a housing, and John knows this, I mean, I've been to all the restaurants in Manchester and they're like, the people we get are from Greenwich and Granville and Bennington and Arlington, Hoosick Falls. And like, that's great. That is the economic synergies we actually make sense, as opposed to saying everything should be affordable in Manchester, which is like, well, but that's not how Manchester is built. All right, we had Andrea and then Jen.
Hearing these conversations is really important because it's not just one issue, right? It's like all of these different issues and it's like, which one is priority? It's like, they're all priority, right? To solve the issue of the housing and having enough, educators and people in each industry and all that jazz. It's kind of funny that you're bringing up housing specifically too, because last night I was not able to go to the Planning Commission meeting for Shaftesbury because the laptop was accidentally locked away. So the Zoom component didn't happen. But a few years ago, Shaftesbury was interested in tiny houses. And, the other parts of Vermont and the country are utilizing tiny houses and putting in the proper regulation to make sure that, that the environment, as it should with any kind of home, the environment is respected. And here in Vermont, we are very much about sustainability and protecting our environment because that's important, right? The healthier the environment, the healthier we are as people. So the tiny house conversation, I think, is one to be had, definitely one to look into. There's a tiny house convention. I don't know if they still have it with the pandemic, but it happens in northern Vermont, maybe the Killington area. I haven't made it yet. I've wanted to. I'm very much turned on by the tiny house concept because if there are even tiny house communities and they are respecting the environment and people can come in greater numbers and become part of our community and land roots here and become part of Southwestern Vermont Medical Center or whatever it is, or even traveling nurses. These are things that are not just going to solve the issue for people living in our towns and communities, but also people that want to come in. So I think tiny houses is really something that I'm like very big on. It's something that I really promote, especially as a digital nomad. I'm even of the thinking of, one day I'm going to buy a van, convert it, and drive across the country while I work out of it, because that is what a lot of people are doing, and they're very successful and enjoying life. So I think it's really important that we're having these conversations about different approaches. And so we can all, live a work-life balance and put food on our table and make it happen. I think Vermont is a very special place, and I really support anything that is going to help all of us in a positive way and support the environment. So thanks.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Andrea. Jen.
Boy, I have some pretty unpopular opinions when it comes to Airbnbs. And as well as vacation homes. I heard a statistic about a month ago that I literally can't get out of my head. Vermont has the highest percentage of homes that are vacant, that are just second homes sitting empty. 23% of Vermont homes. Like, that just blows my mind. And I get it. Someone like John, whose kind of whole thing is all about tourism and, bringing people in, and the chamber is a big part of what we do. But I like people to have a house to live in and not be homeless. And I feel so torn. I have this moral dilemma when I have clients hire me to sell their home that they've been successfully renting to long-term tenants for a long time. And they say, I know that I can get more for the house now than I ever can before. Whether someone's going to buy it to live in it, rent it themselves, or Airbnb it. They don't care. And so now I'm forced to be showing a home that has tenants in it who know that they've been given a notice. They have nowhere to go. Every single day I am on Facebook groups and seeing the dire circumstances of people having nowhere to go. And there's just no resources reliably to point them to. The waiting lists for subsidized housing are miles long. That's not a solution for people. The workforce housing problem, I think, has been made so much harder because of the greed of people selling their homes and choosing to kick out their tenants to do Airbnb. So I totally agree with what Jeffrey's saying. I love that you kind of put a number on it. People are making $100,000. I read an article yesterday from Realtor Magazine that you can make 30% more on average doing short-term rentals as opposed to doing a long-term rental. Yeah. So I just, I think that we have totally missed the mark in terms of regulation. I personally would love to see the state of Vermont, and specifically certain towns that know that this is a crisis level problem for them, like Manchester and Bromley, to get behind this issue and say, okay, maybe the state's going to move at the pace of a dinosaur, but then we need to regulate this on a local level before we literally don't have housing for anyone who lives here already. I also want to say that I know of at least one construction project, two actually, who've been totally stalled out, and all their investors have pulled out because of Act 250. So while it's great that Vermont wants to protect the environment, I have my green designation, I got solar on my roof, I am a green proponent, believe me. But we are at the point now where regulation has gone to the far extreme, and it's preventing people from being able to build housing to house people. So what's more important, the people or the environment? Why can we not find the proper balance to meet both of those needs? So that's extremely frustrating for me.
To quickly add to that too, not only can they not build, but they can't redo their property. And that's why Bennington looks the way it does, because there's such strict regulations, and now you have a very unattractive place to build and raise a family because it's so highly regulated. That's a personal opinion. I think.
Yeah, I don't think that that's accurate, Jeffrey, but there's no regulation as far as renovations go, other than that it has to meet ADA code if a building is a public building. So let's say someone has a 4-unit and they're deciding to put $20,000 into improvements. Well, out of that $20,000, actually $5,000 has to be put towards ADA compliance. Whether that's a ramp or handicap.
It seemed like there was so many buildings that just haven't been touched in very long.
But that just has to do with them not being good landlords and not investing in the income that they're getting back into their building. That's not a regulation issue.
Okay.
Or absentee landlords. The building's just sitting there. They're doing nothing with it.
But I will also say too, along those lines, they're not all being bad. I think that there's a huge misunderstanding of people thinking that, I hear this all the time, that landlords are being greedy with what they're charging for rent and for what you get. However, the cost of taxes in Bennington are outrageous. A home in Bennington at a certain price point in Shaftesbury has double the tax bill what Shaftesbury has. So the tax rates are just totally out of whack. And then Bennington's water and sewer expenses are very, very high. They're constantly going up. Our electricity is constantly going up. Fuel oil is off the chart. So if you have a home with one boiler for multiple units, that landlord's paying that heat bill. So it's not actually very lucrative to be a landlord. And so unless you have at least 5 or 6 or more units, and most of our homes are not that large. Most of them have only 2, 3, 4 units. The more units, the better economy of scale. So I would love to see 8 to 14 unit buildings be built so that you could have some profitability and enough money to constantly keep reinvesting and keeping the building looking nice.
Paula, you had your hand up. Yep.
Yeah, I just learned that in North Carolina, there is a law that does not allow, when you sell a house that has been rented, does not allow you to change the contract of rental agreements for 6 months after the sale. And I don't know if we have something like that in Vermont.
I don't think so. Are you able to talk?
But Rex keeps talking, so if he keeps going, I'll mute myself.
It's fine. She'll hop back in. Maybe she'll type into the comment bar. Yeah. I don't know of anything, but I would again lean on Jen or one of our other realtors to kind of better understand that process. The only honestly, the things that we have here in Bennington are an ordinance on blight, which has improved some of the properties, which means you can't have grass grown to a certain length and to the sidewalk, and that was put in a couple of years ago. I think there's still a lot more work, but it's also it's tough. It's oftentimes when we do development. I just had this conversation with the Putnam and somebody talking about that remember that the developers, whether we're talking the Energizer building and the owners of that, or the developer that might purchase that, or Putnam, that they themselves are not the restaurateur. They are not the hardware store. So it's up to me and John, if he was still on here, and others to show off these properties. But oftentimes I think in a community kind of survey or roundtable, there's like, we should have this and this and a bouncy house, and we should have, skate parks and you kind of go, right. But, in kind of the capital society that we live in, you do need that bar to show up. You need that hardware store to show up. You need that breakfast place to show up. And we can build, what we've gotten good at least in Bennington, we've gotten really good at building these assessments that allow an investor to imagine what that could look like. And that's a really good example of that is the middle school, high school, and the Putnam block. And it's happening right now with Energizer, where there will be this multi-$1,000 assessment, which gets that investor to maybe phase 2 or the second inning or the third inning going, oh, okay, you've done a housing study and a workforce study, and you've done a needs assessment of your community for this property. So all I have to do is come and build it, and I'm pretty much guaranteed through. And so that's been one of those interesting economic development things in the last 10 years that I think Bennington has learned, and then kind of primes the pump a little bit more for the investor. And I mean, Chris with the middle school, I mean, he's like a Hudson Valley boy, and he was just driving up on a motorcycle one day, and he liked the building and was driving to Dorset and stopped in Bennington. And so I mean, it's really how those serendipitous moments can work. Jen, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Alia's comment. If someone has a written lease, the lease runs with the property and they can't change those terms. So let's say the lease is signed starting for April 1st, and then it sells April 13th. Well, that lease is now good through March 30th of next year. And then at that point, the landlord can change those terms. But if someone does not have a written lease, absolutely, Vermont law does allow, there's certain very regulated timeframes, typically 60 days for a rent increase. If it's for the sale of the property and there's no written lease, they can be given 30 days notice to evict, even if they've been there for years. So that is a major crisis for people with children and with pets. That's not something that we've talked about here, but that's a major part of the housing challenge, is that people moving here already have established pets in their home, and trying to relocate here and find a rental that will accept a place with a dog or a cat is so impossible.
And yet, and then and then the landlord, that's his property or her property, and you kind of go, and they've had 20 years of dogs biting corners off of walls and not getting the money, so it's a tough, it's not
always. And then,
but just like you would with your business.
There's the service animal exception, and people sometimes abusing that as well, because they can't be discriminated against. So.
Yep. Okay. We've kind of done a roundabout on housing. Other things that we want to talk about. Bernadette.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, and it's sort of stating the obvious and why it's so important for us to keep our business local and support our local businesses, whether, be an insurance company, a restaurant, all of those things. I know there's such a huge temptation, and I'm guilty of it myself, of, shopping on Amazon because of ease of to get things. But, as a not-for-profit agency, we, hope the community supports us, and it's in our best interest to support the community. And we're thrilled to build those partnerships because it's truly important. And I know that it's definitely preaching to the choir in this group, but I can't, I guess, understate how vital it is for us to continue to support our local businesses. Just as a side, we have VNA Week. It's sort of a made-up holiday that we celebrate once a year. And we take our staff, or, we have over 300 people that work throughout the 2 counties to lunch. So we partner with Bennington restaurants to have our staff go and have breakfast or lunch on us during that week of VNA Week. And we feel that kind of stuff is critically important, not only to our staff to be seen through these businesses, but for those businesses too.
Yeah, that's great, Bernadette. I'd love to learn more about that. And I think Erica too, just even if we could use that as a template, so UCS, and obviously, the hospital has been a great partner during the meal train and working with area restaurants as well. But that's great stuff. Send us some information on that. I just love the concept of like, no, you go out, get lunch, but, we'll support local restaurants. And if there are other ways, one of the hardest things, we've got a small service group on this call, but, I think the area that Erica and I are constantly scratching our head about and trying to figure out, which is how do we provide more services to our service organizations? We've got travel guides, we've got the Shires DMO and that everything. We've got Garlic Town. We've tried to ramp up much more of our opportunities like this, or educational opportunities, which we would like to think, helps our service people, whether that be sales training or marketing training or a financial overview. We hope that might be valuable and value add to your type of organizations. But, just help Erica and me think. If you have ideas, shoot us an email. And I think that's another great example that Bernadette shares, which is like, yes, complement our restaurants, complement our retail stores, but how do we get people going into insurance agencies and teaching them about that, or changing a tire, or knowing that there's mental health services up at UCS and using, kind of our bandwidth and communication platform to share the services that are all local and being shared. And, if you don't use them, they will go away. But all right, we're about at 1:10, 1:07. Just want to be respectful. If we can get you guys out of here a little bit early and get you on this sunny day off of Zoom. But any other final things, and we'll have 2 more roundtables next week and the week after. We're pretty loose about those. So if you wanted to hop into one of those and meet more people in the different industries, just know it might be an industry focus. And then yeah, so other things that just want top of mind, or as we finish out.
I wouldn't mind, just putting a little plug in for myself. I'm 35 years old, and I'm trying to start a company that it seems like most of my competitors in the market here have either inherited the business or have been bought out by other large conglomerates. And that's really cool. But I used to do construction. Obviously, I have a bunch of tattoos. I'm a unique person. I'm also sober a whole bunch of years. So I have a path, but I'm growing and changing and working on my thing and being a father. So I work with an aggregate out of Colorado, and kind of gives me a different advantage than most of the other companies, where I'm kind of quoting with the backing of a $1 billion book, so we're not just like small, whatever. So I've been actually able to save a lot of people money. I've been take people out of Progressive Direct and put them in with Progressive, you know, but that helps. I mean, this morning, I took a client that I had for a year, re-quoted her, saved her a whole $100 a month,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a service based company too. I have my cell phone on me everywhere I go. That's something that I spent a year working at Langway when I transitioned up here because I have a kid in the area, and I had to handle a lot of calling and no answer machines and waiting 4 hours. And that's when I was like, you know what, I'm going back to insurance, which is what I did. I worked at State Farm in Pennsylvania, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to take my dividends from I'm a partner in a drug and alcohol treatment center in New Jersey. It's called Absolute Awakenings. It's bougie. If anybody ever knows anybody that needs to go to treatment and doesn't want an institutionalized vibe, right? Or just whatever, like there's a lot of people that are like, I'm not going to treatment and sleeping, you know, I want my own room and all that. Like that's, you can contact me and we'll talk. But you know, it's there. And you know, and then we also do scholarships all the time. There's always 2 or 3 people in there. But yeah, anyway, so like if you have companies or you want to put something together where I can come in and introduce myself, I'd be happy to do that. It helps me. The more better I do, then the better I can grow and try to build something that's going to last here a long time. That's what I want to do. I want to have.
I've got a shout out to you, Jeff. I think that is really great. I think I appreciate your honesty about your journey. I agree with Bernadette. But I also think we need to use you as a reference because when people are in trouble with substance use, there are plenty that goes across the economic spectrum and the social class spectrum. Yeah. And as a not-for-profit mental health center, we don't have the connections on how to reach, as you said, the bougie substance use place. And we all kind of laugh, but that is also, I mean, you don't want the walls to be what stops people. Right. And you don't want the labels to be what stops people. The other thing that we are so excited about this CCBHC grant is it will probably triple, or I hope quintuple, or more than that, actually, whatever 15-fold is, doesn't come off my Latin right away, is to increase the peer support and peer counseling components in advising all of the mental health services that we do. Right now, we have a small, very vocal, very dedicated people who help advise us and help provide some groups and services, but we need way, way more, because part of it is decreasing stigma and preventing suicide and preventing the slow suicide of chronic substance use. And so those pieces that interfere with relationship building, that interfere with actual having conversations and being listened to, are the things that destroy our fabric of society. And so exactly what you're doing is...
One of the reasons I'm vocal about it is people ask me all the time, how the hell did you become an insurance agent? And I just got to be like, well, I'm sober. This is my come up story, you know, and it just is what it is. I can't be ashamed of it. You know, I have to explain the throat tattoo somehow. But
it's also life experience.
Yeah. And I'm relatable, you know, like I just put a post up today. It says, I'm not your suit and tie agent, but I'm damn good at being of service.
Well, and Jeffrey, I'll throw you a bone and make sure you know that you're not alone. I've been sober for 19 years. And I would not be successul if it wasn't for that. So kudos to you and to me.
Yeah.
And go tattoos. I got 2 too.
I would say there's an interesting, and I just noticed it post COVID, and I think Erica has too. There's this really interesting undercurrent around. We had somebody on the call last week with the Wilson House, obviously. But this conversation came up as well the use of toast at, annual meetings and things like that. The work, Jeffrey, that you're doing, the work that Joshua Sherman and his crew is doing, and the clean jams. And it's just, again,
my best friend.
Yeah, Ben. So when we talk about niche topics or niche collaborations, I think that there's something there, and I would encourage some of you to go offline and just say, wow, we have a really interesting, sober kind of environment, or all the way up to Dr. Reeve, where there's some mental health. And is there something going on here? And are we creating a really, niche culture in the shires of Vermont, which encourages, as much as craft beer and craft distilleries, which is great. It also offers some place for mocktails, and that's just, and that becomes common on the menu, as opposed, and Jen, you brought this up before, I don't want to go to a restaurant and feel pressure to kind of have to participate in that societal game. But I think we've heard this on a couple calls right now, which this is a business call. So it's just, obviously something's percolating to the top.
I think what I want to just sort of kind of point out is that there is a large segment of our community which is sober. And I think that it gets almost no press compared to the opioid crisis, the drug overdoses, the Narcan, the rejection, the stigma. There's just a lot of negativity surrounding addiction, and we don't celebrate the outcome of recovery, which is that you can get sober and that you can have an amazing life and contribute back to society.
Yeah.
Let me ask you let's do some low hanging fruit there. To me, I think you're right, Jen, and there's a possible story there that we could at least get bumped up to the Banner and Journal. Is that something, maybe Jen and Jeffrey, you'd be willing to work with me on? And I think whatever, like I said, revenge travel, what a catchy little term that will be, horribly used in the next summer. Well, let's find whatever this is. And whether that's kind of a recovery environment that's happening in the shires or something like that. And I think that that's something that Jim Therian, or at least a Sue Allen, would say, you know what, we need to balance our media by saying it can't be all doom and gloom. There's also some fantastic things going on. And even
it's a new spring, Matt.
Here we go. New spring.
I'm all about being a beacon of hope for other people, because I was a hot mess of a man bun, and now I'm
Did you say man bun?
Man bun. You should.
Yeah.
Dreadlocked. And I just been trying, at first it was like stay sober, but I go to my meetings, I go to the Wilson House and stuff, and I share hope all the time. I'm exhausting for some of the people that just want to, be like, wow, but I don't know how else to do it. You know what I mean? Yeah. I wake up, I had back surgery at 28, so I wake up in pain and I deal with all kinds of stuff, and I rarely take Advil. You know what I mean? I'm having, it's the hope and it's the progress that keeps me moving. It's waking up and hitting that $500,000 goal, which I didn't really think I was going to hit, but I did. I wrote it on my business plan, and even just sitting there writing a business plan, with 3 years sober and a little kid being like, yeah, I'm about to take $25,000 and just throw it at this thing and not get a paycheck for 3 months. But to be able to get through all that, and then, and be sizing up, it's just incredible. My uncle, who still drinks a lot, he's the one I have working for me in Pennsylvania. And he actually closed his farmer's insurance to work with me because of the products that I can offer. Is incredible. I mean, that was a lot of work to find, to get to that point. So
great. Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Jeffrey. And if you don't mind, and Bernadette, I know you have to hop off, so we'll pull this to a close. But if Jeffrey and Jen, at the very least, if you don't mind, and let me know if you do, you can let me know offline. If I could put you on an email with the editor of the Banner and Journal and see if we can't generate just a good story about this. And I'm thinking also Joshua and Ben being on that email, and possibly Berta and Fawn up at the Wilson House as well. Cause I think you're right, Dr. Reeves, you know, just kind of a spring renewal, spring revival. And, but I think there's some, I mean, and even toast being in our backyard, you know, I mean, what is that all about? So I think that's kind of I think there's a thread there.
Who does that? Who does toast?
I'm going to forget, but I know there's a strong relationship there with Joshua Sherman. Erica, do you know? Yeah, and the local.
Nancy had told us, and I forgot.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't care. Everybody's different about their sobriety, you know. But I just, like I said, I need to justify my appearance somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's tons of people in the professional recovery community, and you know, as far as how you want to keep it tight or grow it, you know, I can certainly introduce you to a lot of folks. There's, you know, the Turning Point Center of Bennington has professional recovery coaches that go out into the hospital.
I'm a certified coach. I just never worked there.
But what I think is fascinating, what's different than just the normal mental health article that's in there, is that you're all business owners and you're all very successful. And whether you take Joshua Sherman and his work with Benjamin and kind of this amazing relationship with EQX and Toast, whether you take Jen, kind of you starting your own business, Jeffrey, obviously you do. I mean, to me, not that normal articles are bad. They're just like, oh yeah, another mental health article, or you know, we have to balance, as opposed to like, oh wow, there really is an undercurrent of just this kind of, you know. And even if there were a couple restaurants, whatever, that were serving up, you know, even a sober night would be kind of an interesting, you know, where the only thing on the menu is mocktails.
Delicious. The advantage of sobriety should be the highlight of it.
That's good. I mean, and I think that focus of such an article not being on identifying the mental health diagnosis, but the process of living through experiences. Because that's also part of what we've done through COVID, is living through the experience. And whether you're talking about severe trauma or whether you're talking about substance use, those are traumatic to your cells in your brain, to your body, but traumatic to you as a concept of a person, how you identify and experience yourself and what you're willing to tolerate in yourself to move forward.
There's been a big movement, I would say, in the last 3 to 5 years, sober is sexy, and, you know, to really embrace that there's a large number of people in our society that don't even identify as being addicts or alcoholics, but they are sober curious and they want to be able to make that choice without judgment from their peers. So I think that if the business community was to embrace and cater to that growing segment of our population who says, I choose not to drink, whether it's because I have an allergy to it, or it's just a choice, to make it more attractive.
Alcoholics and drug addicts and the trauma, that's just a pivot point, man. We can take the pain. So it's like, we just got to pivot on top and shoot in another direction. You know what I mean? For me, it's hope, redemption, fatherhood, changing the cycle of trauma. I went to therapy for 2 years, and right out of when I first started getting sober, and like I learned about adverse childhood experiences and all that stuff, like blew my mind. I had no idea, like, you know, it started to make so much more sense. Then I was able to, okay, this is science, and now I can do reality and move forward. And then what makes that better? Stuff like this, community, being a part of and stuff. That's what heals all of it.
Well, I'll let you guys get on another call for all of that. But I do think we have something there, and let's start with like a little push on the media. But, you know, I think it goes back to Dr. Reeves, you and I talking about, even if in-person panel at some point, where I think beyond the sobering part, I think you're right, Jeffrey. And that's a lot of the work I've done for a lot of years is around just like, there's something deeper there. And if you can discover that deeper thing, you're going to be set free from whatever your addiction is. They don't have to be these kind of, you know, the pillars of addiction. They're minor little addictions too, and self-doubt and things like that. And I think we run into a lot of that in Vermont, specifically in rural communities. So I'm with you guys. Let's explore some of that. But I want to put you all on an email, even you, Dr. Reeve, with Sue Allen, the editor of the Banner and Journal, and just say, hey, we had this conversation, thought it would be an interesting angle. And then it's kind of left up to the media, but usually we got some good pull over there too. So really appreciate you all hopping on. I put in the show notes, you know, if you want to get together in some in-person places, we have those at our networking mixers, and we have a couple ribbon cuttings and stuff coming up and celebrations on anniversaries. It's a very exciting spring and summer we have planned, but really want to thank everybody for hopping on. Stay connected and be well for the rest of the holiday weekend.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Matt. Beautiful job. Nice to meet everyone.
Yep. Ciao.
See you.